sometimes it's hard to see progress. Like we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we forget what we could do in a decade. We just got to get that snowball going. When I started selling, it was hard to get the first sales, but eventually I got better and better and better. All right, we're going to do another Rags to Riches Secrets today. Today's podcast is what we're going to cover: the secrets to going big. Are you thinking like, hey, Mike, how do I scale my business up? Mike, hey, how do I get a breakthrough? Hey, Mike, how do I get to the next level? That's what we're going to cover today. So the reason I'm bringing this up, as I'm working on my business, trying to grow it, scale it, be able to help more people to make a bigger dent in the universe. Sometimes you're going to have bad days. Sometimes you're going to be like, I wish I could make more progress. I wish this thing could go faster. But here's what you got to know. I was actually literally reflecting on this just yesterday, and that's why I want to share this podcast with you. Is if you're looking for an opportunity or some way of inspiration and being able to measure and gauge if you're actually making progress. And here's what I realized. When I first started out selling solar, I went to house to house to house, knocked on door after door after door. And for some reason, I just couldn't seem to get some momentum. For some reason, I couldn't seem to figure out how to sell solar to get somebody interested in it. And I ran into a coach. I got myself a mentor, and he gave me just a couple little secrets, And as soon as he gave me these little secrets, I'm like, aha, okay, now I can do this. Now I can try this. Now I can do this. Like one of them, he says, Mike, he says, exhaust all options. When you're with the customer, try to find every possibility or possible way to allow that customer to say yes. Because here's what I know. We don't do go backs. We don't go back. We don't go revisit them. And so as soon as he gave me these little nuggets, I then were like, okay, I started doing it and implementing it. Before long, I actually became good enough that I became actually great at it. Like right now, as I'm working on building out my business, scaling it out, bringing influencers on the podcast, giving people a chance to have a platform. People want to have their voice heard. People want a platform. And I'm like, all right, let me get this podcast studio. Let me get this thing set up. Let me allow people to have a voice so they could come on this podcast so that they can share a voice, they can share a message, they get some momentum. And I noticed that with myself, because as you go into new territory, it's hard to be able to measure, am I actually making progress? And then when I stop and I go back and I said, well, let me ask what happened on my previous experiences. My previous experiences is I started doing this thing, and then I started doing this thing, and I had glimmers of hope. Before long, it's like a snowball. Before long, that snow just started collecting and gaining some momentum. So the next thing you know, you're like, wow, it did work. It did become successful. I did get better. I did figure out how to crack this code, And so I know that's probably where you're at, or you wouldn't be listening to my podcast, right? And you're like, Mike, show me the secrets. What are the rags to riches secrets? So that's why we're covering this today. This is the secrets to going big. Actually, right here, I'm going to drop 7 big value bombs on you. Where do I get these 7 big value bombs? I like to read, I like books. Books is one way where you can compress decades down to days. Rather than spending a decade learning the secrets or the nuggets, allow somebody else to be able to share those nuggets with you. That's the value of listening to a podcast like this, So here's one of the books that I really like. It's Bold, Bold. You're trying to figure out how to go big, So here's some secrets that you can take to the bank and use it, because I've used these secrets and applied them to tremendous success. So secret number 1, the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself. Why would you want to sit around and wait for somebody else to come up with your future? Why would you want somebody to determine your outcome? Wouldn't you rather just be in control? That's why I go with this alpha. Alpha is a protector and it's a leader. Alpha is the one that creates the opportunities. Alphas are the ones that see the future and fashion it, There was a guy that came up to Walt Disney's brother after Disneyland got kind of dedicated and stuff. And he goes, man, too bad Walt's not here to see this. And the guy's he goes, excuse me? He goes, look, Walt saw Disneyland before it ever existed. He saw this first. We are the ones that are now just seeing. And that's what he's talking about. You want that future? Create it yourself. Don't settle for leftovers. Even the description of what I just said, once you're out of fashion a beautiful meal, rather than show up and see what's left? Exactly. Okay, secret number 2. When you do not have a challenge, create one. Don't sit complacent. Don't sit around and just twiddle your thumb. Yeah, man, I accomplished all my goals. Boom, I hit $1 million. Boom, I hit $10 million. Okay, cool. Now what's next? What's the next thing? What's the next thing that you're going to accomplish? I've got a friend who he created a door knocking company. He scaled it up. He sold it, made millions. And like right here, right now, here's what one of the things he said. I was at an event, okay? And he literally said this, and he was like, I'm so mad. And he just literally stood up. He goes, I'm sorry, guys. He goes, I am just so mad. He goes, like, I got money. I got a beautiful wife. Like, I have all of these things, and I'm just not happy. And the big things that he ran into is he had accomplished and achieved his goals. Now he needed to find the next thing that would push and challenge him so that he could get back into the groove of feeling like he was making a dent in the universe and contributing. Having money and doing nothing doesn't necessarily make you happy. Does that make sense? So create a challenge, go after the next target, okay? All right, number 3, no simply means go one level higher. Have you ever run into somebody that says no? I worked at corporate America and I would hear the word, like I had ideas of cool things. I'm like, hey, let's do this. I present it to just my immediate boss, right? And they're like, no. They kind of, no, we're not going to do it. Or whatever. They like it, but then they never get any momentum behind it. And one time I was like, you know what? On my next idea, this idea is bold. It's legit. And here's what I mean. I worked with a whole bunch of engineers and they made these circuit cards, okay? And when you make a circuit card, you need all of these engineering components to go on a circuit card. Problem is when you place a PO and you work it through the system, you could be waiting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get your component. Like, how would you like to have a turnaround time, start a project today, not even be able to really work on it for 6 months? Like, what if you got the wrong parts? What if this doesn't work? What if it's not compatible? Then you bring it in, plug it in, and then you test it. Like, who could stand taking that much time to have any results? I'm like, you know what? We were talking, I'm like, it would be cool if we had a component store inside our facility where you guys could literally go up to the counter, get your parts, bring it back, and design and assemble your circuit card. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what we need. So we were jazzed about it. I'm like, all right, let me think. What happens when I take these cool strategies like this to my immediate boss? I'm like, yeah, they're probably going to go, oh, that's neat. And then maybe they won't do anything about it, right? Status, like, it's just kind of, everything's fine. They don't pretend like everything's good. So I said, let's do something different. I made this really cool looking card. It was a card. And then when you opened up the card, there was a $100 bill taped inside it and it says, if we waste your time, you can keep our money. And so we got this card, made it up. And I went and stood outside the office of the vice president of Raytheon. I mean, we're talking like 14,000 employees, like the company's generating like $3 billion a year, some big number, right? Huge amounts of money. And I'm standing out there and the vice president comes out. And I'm like, hey, Mike, how you doing? And I handed him this card, right? He's like, what's this? Well, my word, all you got to do is just open it up and he looks at it, he opens it up. He sees this $100 bill on there. He's like, dude, this kid's ballsy. Like, what the heck? And so he's like, all right. So he takes that $100 bill and he hands it back to me. He goes, I'm not gonna hold you to this $100. He walks me over to his secretary and says, hey, Mike needs an appointment on my calendar. Okay. So I got on the calendar, and when the day's getting close, I'm getting excited, getting the presentation going. All of a sudden, my boss 2 levels up is like, hey, Mike, hey, you're on Mike Jarrett's calendar. You're on the big boss's calendar. Wait a minute, you can't do that. And I'm like, hey, he took the appointment. They're like, hey, we're bumping you down. We're bumping you down at least 1 level. So I'm 2 levels up, but I'm 1 level down, right, from the big guy. And I'm like, all right. So we went and did this presentation. Did it, like, made it entertaining, engaging. We killed it. In the end, they're like, bam, we put the CCA component inside the store, okay? Like, that thing came to pass. It happened. And later, when my boss he was about ready to retire, like the next year, and he came up to me and he goes, Mike, he goes, you know what? We should have just left that on the calendar. We should have just left it right where it was at, right where you placed it. And it was fun to have him validate that, but it was also cool to get results, because had I had accepted the no that I would have gotten from my immediate boss, like I used the sales technique of going higher and then allowing them to punt me down. So no means level up, okay? Just go one level higher, okay? Dude, that's a big nugget, man. Be careful, it's a dangerous nugget. You can find yourself getting scalped, but I'm just telling you, I've done it. And like in this book, Bold, like he's done it, and he used many examples of how he's successfully done it, okay? So number 4, if anything can go wrong, fix it. Hell with Murphy. Like, why would you want to expose yourself to something breaking when you know you could actually go close the gap and fix it? What we're trying to test is the actual outcome. We're not trying to discover that the link that we know that's weak actually breaks. We're trying to see if like a strategy or this thing's gonna work. So like, stop screwing around with that. Like, fix it. Don't sit there and go that route, okay? So secret number 5, when given a choice, take both. Yeah. How does both sound to you? I did this last year. I've got 2 side-by-sides. And I'm like, you know what? It'd be cool to have another side-by-side that's new. And I'm like, interesting. I think it would be better to have 2 more brand new side-by-sides. Why don't we just do both, right? So now when we go out and ride, typically it seems like I go out and just take the 2 side-by-sides. I want to take 4, but it seems like the way my groups come together, I end up with 2. Well, when I take them out, I like to take both of the new ones out. It's fun. Like, sometimes you just don't, if you try not to sit there and pick and choose, just ask yourself a better question. Why can't I have both? What would prevent me from having both? What would allow me to have both? Better to ask a positive question. What would allow me to have both? And then if that's possible, and find a way to figure it out. If it's important to you, find a way and just have both. Make sense? Okay, number 6 says the ratio of something to nothing is infinite. Walk away with something, okay? Walk away with something. Just keep poking at it, keep digging at it, keep going. I remember Steve Jobs, he did a commencement address at one of the universities. Basically, he said, he's like, he goes like, business is hard. Like, you got these up days, you got these down days. He's like, it helps if you figure out something that you're passionate about, because it's gonna be hard. He goes, here's something that you gotta know. This is one of the secrets of life. He says, if you take on anything, and you push hard enough, you keep pushing, something will pop out the other side. Just keep pushing, and something will eventually come out the other side. So that was it. Go for it, push hard, get something. Number 7, this one's a good one. An expert is someone who can tell you exactly how something can't work. Don't get overly complicated or fixed on experts. They're like, Mike, you can't do that. Like when I was trying to get the CCA component in there. Mike, you can't do that. Like, you can't do it, or like whatever. Like, you can have an expert. Think about this. The reason you know exactly who Steve Jobs is, okay? The reason you know what the iPhone is, the reason that you know who he is because people told him that can't be done. And guess what happened? It got done. Like Henry Ford. Everybody sees cars, they know the Ford, everybody knows about Henry Ford. Henry Ford said, you know what? We need an 8-cylinder engine. And the engineers are like, that can't be done. And he's like, okay, go build it. And then they tried and they came back and they're, oh, it can't be done. He's like, go try and build it. They kept coming back, it can't be done. And he's like, guess what? We're gonna do it. And he said, keep doing it. And then one day they came back and guess what they said? We did it. It's like what Steve Jobs had. He had the reality distortion field. He caused things to come into existence that nobody believed could. Nobody believed that we should be able to fly. But here we are. Nobody thought a car could replace a horse. Yet here we are. One of them that you're seeing today, everybody's like, oh, electric vehicles, that can't replace a gas-powered vehicle. But guess what's happening? Like, I was at this event, okay? This was crazy. I was at this event. My friend, he was like, Mike, he opens up his jacket and he shows me on the inside, and there's like this Lamborghini on the inside. He put that on the inside of his jacket, and it was pretty cool, right? And I was talking to him and he goes, I'm like, dude, so is your car coming in yet? He's like, dude, he goes, Lamborghini called me just the other day. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. And he goes, they're doing their very last production run of the V10 engine. He goes, because the next production run, the cars are 100% electric. He's like, do you want one? He's like, of course I want one. He said, switch my order out. I'm going to take that new one, okay? So he's got the new V10 on order, right? But here's the deal. The icon of cars, Lamborghini, is going to 100% electric. They're on their last production run. People say, you can't do electric. But there it is. Like they told Elon Musk, you can't do that, but there it is. Like, oh, this one like blew my mind. Like we've been spoiled knowing that you can do PayPal, but the banking system was majorly locked down, okay? Like the big banks, you couldn't do anything different than the way the big banks were doing it. And like Elon Musk is like, whoa, wait a minute. Like what we want to do is we want to set this up and do a PayPal. We want to be able to use emails. We want to be able to transfer money. We want to be able to move money like this. And they're like, you can't do it. And he went and went and went and went. And he didn't relent. PayPal transacts money, okay? Because he was relentless at making and forcing that model into existence. He made a lot of money. Because he made a lot of money, he had capital to go into Tesla. He had capital to go into SpaceX. He had capital to tackle markets that nobody thought could be possible. In fact, when he was starting to do his SpaceX, they're like, Elon, you can't do this, right? Bro, countries put people in space, not people, not a person. Like, are you out of your mind? And he's like, he was relentless. Like he went and created a freaking rocket ship, took it like out to DC, put this model up and mocked it up, and he's like, boom, right in their face. How do you like that? Like they said, he tried to apply or to win some contracts. They're like, you can't do that. We're going to give it to Lockheed Martin. He's like, BS. So he sued him. He actually got him to stop it. And then they actually ended up having to reverse it and actually gave him the contract, and he won. He's like, we're going to do launching things into space for 1/10 of the cost of what it costs you guys to do it. Guess what? He did it. Like, if you want to sit there and doubt Elon, you're in trouble because it's all of the experts who are telling him he can't do it. Neil Armstrong's like, hey, Neil Armstrong, first guy to land on the moon, right? Instead of coming out and supporting Elon Musk, he's like, I don't support him. And like Elon Musk, that's his hero, right? But guess what? He did the stuff anyways. That's what I've noticed. I've run into it all the time. Experts say you can't do this. Like that defies the laws of physics. That defies the laws of like whatever, right? It's just another way of them saying, I don't know how to do it. Therefore, it's easier for me to say it can't be done than to figure out how it can get done. So the secrets of going big is just be bold. Bold, lead in. Read that book. You don't want to read that book? Good thing I did this podcast and gave you some of the big golden nuggets that came out of it. Why do I like these big and gold nuggets? Because I've got a business too. I'm working and I'm getting momentum and I'm moving forward. Okay? Sometimes it's hard to see progress. Sometimes it's hard. Like we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we forget what we could do in a decade. We just got to get that snowball going. When I started selling, it was hard to get the first sales, but eventually I got better and better and better. There was a guy named Garrett J. White. One of the things he said when he was talking about creating content and figuring out how to launch his business, he goes, when I go back and I look at it, he goes, in the beginning, he goes, I sucked. And he goes, and I just kept going. He goes, and I still suck, but I started to suck less. And he goes all the way till one day, I actually sucked so less that I actually became good. That's the secret of bold. That's the rags, the richest secrets. That's the gold nuggets I'm bringing to you. Push on, carry on, use these secret little weapons right here. Get some momentum. You will figure it out, and I will talk to you later.